to AyAyAyAi, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends in the world of AI machine learning. Today, we're excited to introduce you to a revolutionary platform that is changing the game in the recruitment industry. Talent Ascend is utilizing the power of artificial intelligence to improve the recruitment process. AI has the potential to revolutionize recruitment by automating repetitive tasks, improving candidate matching, and reducing bias. By leveraging machine learning algorithms, Talent Ascend can analyze large amount of data to identify the best candidates for a job based on the candidate's skill, experience, and qualifications. This eliminates the use of the resume, cover letter, and application. Another benefit of AI in recruitment is reducing bias. Talent Ascent can help eliminate bias by removing identifying information such as name, gender, and age, defining aspects that are typically found on an application. This can help ensure that candidates are evaluated solely on their qualifications and experience, leading to a more diverse and inclusive workforce. Talent Ascent is an excellent example of how AI can be used to improve the recruitment process. By leveraging cutting edge technology and a commitment to diversity and inclusion, they are making it easier for job seekers and hiring managers to find the right fit. Hashtag AI for DEI. So, with that, let's get started, Lucky.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Helping identify the right talent for the right position is key, and having the right technology like Ascend is fantastic. We had her on here, and she was really able to give us a better understanding of her technology and how AI applies, and it's been a fantastic use case. So thank you for that, and definitely technology changing the way we do business. Today, I'd like to thank David Ramirez for coming on to our show and giving us a better understanding of what he does and how he affects the marketplaces with AI. And welcome, David.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. So one thing is, when we start the program, I like to just welcome you to our show by starting by saying, "Ay ay 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 ay!" AI, welcome.
Ay, ay, ay,
There you go.
Ay, 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 ay.
There you go. Now we're all in. Now we're all in. Now we're ready to play. The pot is good.
So,
So, David,
David,
tell us. Oh, I'm
welcome.
sorry, Asif. If you want to give a little bit more of introduction, but David, tell us more.
Yeah, please, David.
Sure. So I work in the deep learning and computer vision, building solutions usually for defense and government, and excited to talk about that. I'm also very involved in the military veteran mentoring for technology, and I'll be excited to talk about that. And I've been working on my Ph.D. in engineering for a few years now. So just a lot of education under my belt, and I like to push that out as best I can, teaching others informally, and supporting Asif here, and just excited to be here.
Absolutely. I think one identified possibilities in the veterans community is that how does the other veteran educate themselves and then help educate other veterans, right?
Mhm.
When you know something and you want to test out how well and how good you know it is by educating others, right?
Mhm.
There's a code for it, but I'm not going to try that because my brain is fried right now from having a long day at work. So yeah, I think when you're educating somebody else about what it is that you know, you catch yourself about what it is that you don't know or what else you have to master in. So Lucky is the teacher in the room, so we
Mhm.
have a lot to learn from him. So Lucky, let's get this conversation going. See how far we can take it.
Yeah, yeah, David, it's fantastic that you mentor veterans. I do the same thing. There's always an opportunity to pay back, and the way I look at it this way, it's the old, I guess the old adage is you can give somebody a fish
Mhm.
and help them eat that one moment, or you can say, hey, you know what, let me teach you how to fish, and then they can take care of themselves, and then in turn they can train others, and then you strengthen a community. You make people better at, as far as being able to provide for themselves. And I feel the same way when it comes to the veteran population, and you know having to come out from a specific service and then retool themselves is hard.
Hmm.
And to have somebody there to say, hey, you know what, it's not as hard as you think it is, and if it is, this is the best way to do things, and to get to your goals, this is what I can do to help you. And mentoring people is the best way you can give back. So, kudos to you. And without saying kudos, man, you're an amazing person by doing that, and thank you. But can you tell us more about the things that you do with deep learning? Because typically we touch on the outside of what AI is, but we never get in the weeds. So can
Beats,
you just
yeah.
give us a little bit of understanding of, what deep learning is, as opposed to what you see in machine learning and AI? Or do you see that as all of the same thing? Can you just give us how you see deep
Sure.
learning and AI?
So that's potentially like a long discussion topic, but at the
Yes.
high level, it's like people say AI. Maybe in the business world, maybe in the government world, people are calling things AI, and that's fair most of the time. People are saying machine learning, AI and machine learning. Where's the differentiator between AI and machine learning? Well, maybe there's a lot of overlap these days. Where is deep learning and all of that? Well, I would say it's typically for analyzing like complex pieces of data like imagery and video, like um, text, a chat bot and things. That's often going to be driven by deep learning these days. So that's a lot of what I do is creating those sort of solutions. Deep learning is synonymous with neural networks, and all that is to say is you write some code, and the code learns from some data, and then you hope that it does what you want it to. So
Hope.
I'll, I'll end it there, right? That's
Yeah.
why my job hasn't been automated yet, right? It's because it's not an exact science. There's
Right.
still a lot of effort that goes into building these solutions, and it's not simple.
Yeah, hope that it works is I think a running theme on all the projects. And yeah, it's not only difficult, but it's rewarding at the end of the day, because you learn so much about your organizational business process, right? And you bring that subject matter to the surface, because that subject matter expert that you weren't probably before the project started, now at the end of the project, you are like that gold, that nobody can really say like, yep, David is the guy that has done all these, and he understands the business process from perspective that nobody else probably has, because this business has been running for the last 40 some years. All of a sudden we have this new way of inserting our data and creating our output, and David has that knowledge of know-how of all the different parts of the business process where the data came from. So I think when I talk to people that are in machine learning and deep learning, or providing that AI capability to an organization, I find them to be irreplaceable. I think, like you said, I haven't been replaced yet, right? And they joke about it. They say like, oh, text to text, text to video, text to image, text to AI, right? As in, just from a prompt, you can create another AI to do, new AI. Well, look, possibility is there, but doesn't mean you're going to replace coding anywhere anytime soon,
Mm-mm.
right? Look, I have
People
a
are,
joke.
yeah.
I'll try, right? Some reporter was,
Yeah.
making a report about how the coders will get replaced. So she went around, interviewed people, and the program manager said, "Yes, we're working on that." Everybody goes clap, 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 and then they go to somebody else in the business. They're
Hmm.
like, "When will the coders be replaced?" They're like, "Oh, in coming decades." And then they go to the coders, and the coders couldn't stop laughing. They're like, "I can't answer that because I can't stop laughing." That's
Mhm.
Yeah.
hilarious. People that don't know coding, people don't know much about developing AI, they will always come up with a theory of like, yeah, text to AI, right? That's cool. It's coming. It's going to be here tomorrow.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it's all fun and game, but nobody really does that coding and develops a engineering of data will be able to say that with a straight face, right? Um, so thank you, David, for that breakdown. I appreciate it. And tell us a little bit more about your journey from your military active duty, correct,
Yeah.
to the level that you're in right now, PhD, which is very inspirational.
Nearly
Amazing.
there. Nearly there. It's one.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I was in the United States Marine Corps, 2008 to 2012. So I think we were still in Afghanistan, still in Iraq in that time. So to join up at that point, you're really expecting to go to combat or something, right? To join the Marine Corps, and every Marine's a rifleman first usually. But besides that, I was trained in electronics as an electronics technician. So I learned radio systems, and I learned soldering and electrical theory, and um, spent my 4 years in the Marine Corps. Tried to serve as best I could there in that time. I deployed with the Navy in a reaction force out to the Pacific. Got to see a lot of the world, but never really in a combat situation. So I got out of the Marine Corps, took some of those skills, and electrical engineering was the sort of the closest fit to what I was trained to do. Um, and I didn't know what engineering was at that point. Um, right, engineering in the military is digging in ditches and building bridges and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And to get out into academia, into the university, and to apply for engineering, I didn't fully understand the amount of effort, the struggle that is. That's one of the hardest degrees that you can do in a university. Uh, Perhaps maybe that's a biased opinion, but there's very high math requirements, science, programming, and that's all before you get to the electrical engineering portion of that degree. So really challenging stuff. Was able to scrape by and get it done. Uh, Learned a lot. Met a lot of folks at my local university, which is Arizona State, and they happen to have a very well-regarded engineering program. So during that time, I was involved in a National Science Foundation grant. Got some free money from the government to learn the basics of this new emerging field, neural networks and deep learning. Neural networks have been around for a while, but to apply them, to learn about them, and actually apply them to business problems back in 2014, that was fairly novel. Not a lot of people were doing that.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so I was very lucky to get involved in AI research at that time, and I've sort of stuck with it ever since. Got very fortunate to be involved in it when I was. Completed the 4 year degree, stayed around for a master's degree, stayed around for a PhD. All the while, I was working a full time job. So I'm still working full time in engineering. I am trying to get that PhD. I've been at it for more years than I care to say right now. But I'll get it one day. Just got to keep working at it. It's just one day at a time. So that's where I'm at right now. Been doing this stuff for a while. I've got uh, some. I've only worked for a few companies. Been pretty loyal to the employers I've had. Good employment experiences overall. So
Mhm.
yeah, been very fortunate.
Wow, when you bring so much to the table, I wouldn't want you to go either. Wow, that's extensive experience in an area that has just recently blown up. Just
Mhm.
now, AI, this year has become a household name with generative AI just leading the march with, you have stable diffusion, chat GPT. Now, you're right. You're not going to ever lose your job. And I'm a form of developer of sort myself. I'm not going to lose my job anytime to chat GPT. I actually tested it to see there's an area where they say you can test it and see how it develops code. So
Mhm.
I was curious. I was like, all right, let's do one that I would give my students because I teach Python. I teach a lot of different courses. So I said, let me just see how it does. So I said, just to make it simple, give me I said, give me randomize 5 different numbers between 0 and 70. No, 6 different numbers, and the or 5 different numbers, and the last number randomized between 0 and 25.
Hmm.
So basically, I was just trying to get it to create a sample of a lottery picking, application. Just a real simple,
Random number generator,
a
right?
number generator. Yeah, exactly. It failed. It failed horribly. I was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. So I retried, and so I tried for hours for it to create, and it didn't, and so it missed the mark. But it did okay in the sense that if I would consider someone that didn't know anything about programming and I said do something, and then it output something that resembled code, it did. And it was almost in the right structure, and it didn't give me any of the outputs, but it was semi impressive. But at the same time, I knew I'm not going to lose my job anytime soon to
Sure.
this guy.
Let me ask you, Lucky, if
Yeah.
if you got that assignment turned in from a student, and that was the code that they submitted on their assignment, how would you grade that? Would that be a failure, or
Oh
would
yeah.
that be, yeah,
Oh
that's an,
yeah.
it didn't work. The
It
program
didn't
didn't
work.
run, so it's an F.
It's an
Okay,
F.
that's
Yeah,
fair.
and I would say to them, way to use your resources, way to think outside of the box. I would have loved to have that feature when I was your age or whenever I was trying to figure things out. But you got to use that as a building block. Don't
Mhm.
submit that as final work. But hey, good job, good try. And I let them know because I honestly I think that you're not going to know until you push the envelope. And sometimes you just got to see. And if they don't know, they're not going to know until they get called to the carpet. Lesson learned. Next time, do a little bit more work afterwards, and maybe it'll give you something to work off of. Because at the end, Asif and I have agreed AI is great, but AI is not there to take over. It's there to help us make more intelligent, better decisions on how we do business. And so that is where AI, I think, was going to help us as far as taking over the world and finding better ways of making shoes. I'm not so sure about that, but helping us make better decisions. That's where we're at right now, and take advantage of that.
Sure, yeah, and to get back to the earlier point, programmers that I work with, they're using these tools to be more effective, to
That's
write
right.
better code. In the academic setting, in research, I've worked with a lot of folks that are trying to make these systems better, so they will write better code in the future,
Right.
and there's certain benchmarks, and many of them would have differing opinions on a simple problem maybe doesn't deliver a successful solution. It depends on which system you're using. It depends on the prompt. It depends on maybe what level of tier of maybe you're paying for GPT or something, right?
Mhm.
There's some factors that may influence the sort of output you get out of that, and maybe Chat GPT is the right tool for that.
Mhm.
There's Visual Studio Code Copilot is another system that people are using. So that's
Yeah.
integrated into an IDE, a development environment for software engineering. And I've heard that that works pretty good, and I've seen it work pretty decent.
Well, so you're talking about a student turning in an assignment.
Mhm.
I'm really in the middle of my life somewhere, right? And I appreciate the fact that somebody taught me with a compass to navigate around the woods, right?
Mhm.
And I'm a digital immigrant. And I think I've adapted to technology sometime after I was born. Not I was born into technology. So I remember the other day. It it was a hard moment of reality because my Google went down. I'm driving and my Google Map is not working. Okay, all right, Google Map. I have iPhone. I'll go to my iMap, right? Why iMap is not working? So just imagine the anxiety that I'm going through as I'm driving the car. I'm just like, I'm in the highway. I'm okay as long as I keep driving straight. But once I get off that exit, I have no idea where else to go after that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So the reason I say my age is because I'm thinking to myself like, this must be the depression inducing for somebody who's been digital native, as in they were born into Google Maps,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So when you're talking about coding from the scratch, I had a little chill down my spine. I was like, you want me to write hello again? That was really hard. I don't want to do anything from
Hello
scratch.
world.
Give me 70% of the coding. I will do maybe the 30% of the coding after 5 years of trying.
Mhm.
By the way, I'm trying to tell you that I'm a bad coder. I've tried coding, never worked for me. So I mean, like that ability to recall your memory. I appreciate that. That ability to say like, this is the logic. This is where the language that I'm typing in and how it gets translated through Linux, kernel, and then how that kernel is able to push that out in zeros and ones. That ability to that common sense of saying like, it's just not about writing a language, it's the art of writing that language in such a way that when that
Mhm.
zeros and ones goes through your semiconductor chips is not billions but rather few millions, right? There's a difference in your ability to compile that coding, right? And execute that in a fast fashion without consuming that much power. So there's an art behind it, and I so appreciate Lucky bringing that up, and David, you hitting on it. I gotta say, as a person who's learned to navigate and not able to recall that navigation skills while I was driving. I mean, my excuse is that I haven't really lived in a city long enough to learn about that city, but it felt pain inducing. It was just like, wow, what is happening? What do I do next? I have no way to move around the city, and I don't want to pull over and waste a few minutes because I want to get there on time, right? Um,
Maybe another point
that
adjacent
was the memory you brought up.
another point that adjacent to what you're saying is a lot of the students going through university education right now or going through high school, they're using these tools that are emerging, the chat GPT. And if you suddenly took that away, or if you don't have access to that in your day job or something, let's say you worked in a classified area and there's no AIs allowed in the classified area, can you do your job still? Can you do it well? Do you have a
Mhm.
foundational understanding to still operate without those advanced tools? And when I was in growing up in high school, smartphones were not a thing yet, right? Nobody, you couldn't cheat by Googling it in the test room because you didn't have a smartphone. But
Mhm.
everybody had calculators, right? So like, can you still operate in your job as an engineer without a calculator? Well, this is getting pretty far back in time.
Right.
People did at
Mhm.
one point, but people are using the tools that they got, and they try to use them whenever they can to the best of their ability. So
Yeah, I used to cheat at calculus with my with my calculator because I would save everything, and I was not. It wasn't a problem back then because you were just called resourceful.
You had TI in your hand, right? Text
Yes, I
Instrument.
did.
uh,
And you know what? You bring up a great point. I saw this, and not to reach out into a different. I'm not into social media, but I saw on YouTube a TikTok video,
mhm.
and they had a couple of girls from Southern California, and they gave them a math equation. And it was one of those moments where I saw my daughter and I saw her friends, and their whole lives they had a phone, and they were used to having, okay, what's that? What's okay? And it was real. It was,
Yeah,
you're gonna laugh. How silly is this? Two times two times one equals.
yeah. Well, certainly, but the tool these days is Alexa. What is two times two times one?
Exactly.
Right.
And
Right.
so, oh
Hmm.
gosh, she hears it. She's in
Yeah.
the other room. She's always listening.
He's like, what do you? What? Hold on. I hear you, David.
What's that? I wasn't listening prior to this. I just woke up. Sorry. What was that?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything else, David, except for Alexa. Two times one.
Right. There's certainly privacy issues using tools like that, but they are convenient for a lot of
Yes.
things. So you give up some level of privacy for the convenience. But yeah, people are always worried about the new tool, right?
Hmm.
People aren't getting the right level of education, this or that. Maybe there's some credence to that. Maybe there's not enough people getting deep technical education in engineering, or like a deep technical understanding of IT, or or business analytics or something, right? Because it's maybe they're not getting the introductory experience that they need to take interest in those things. I don't know.
And I want to bring up, of course, what Talents Ascend is trying to accomplish, which is to write your soft skills and your hard skills from military and convert that into a civilian language, from military language to civilian language, right? So that way, when civilians are looking at your resume, they're not reading the jargons from military, but they're reading the jargons that are civilian, accepted in civilian side of the language, right? So I'm not pivoting so much away from what it is that we're discussing. I'm adding the veteran piece to that. Like, what look, I guess I will brag about myself. Like I said, I had to navigate around the woods using a compass, right? That was part of not just your training, but you had to do that in order to just to stay up to date with your on-job training, right? They have to sign you off and say, like, you're still proficient in navigating using a compass, right? Um, that
Even without GPS, right? Because
what's that?
military is reliant on GPS these days.
Military is relying on GPS, yes, and we have to talk about that, right? Because
Mhm.
when you think about a military veteran, how they are taught, what they are taught, right, is a little bit more technical in that teaching, right? As in, we do go deep into that technology to say, like, if you're a radio man, you have to understand every piece of that radio, right? Not that you'll break it apart and put it together, but you have to understand how this infrastructure is working out on your behalf. So if you have a radio in hand and trying to communicate a few miles down the road, you have to understand what obstructs the radio signal, right? And have to work around that. So that's just one example, right? If you're a tank commander, if you're a truck driver, or you have like all this logistics that's moving around, you have to understand the logistics so you can perform your mission, specifically the job that you have to do in order to provide other soldiers or other airmen the safety that they need, right? Because if you don't do your job, they're in danger. So there's that priority that the military sets for you, and then it teaches you all those things that you have to know about the infrastructure. And when you get out to the civilian world, you you bring that technology understanding to the table, right? And that technology table translates to all the other technology. And this is what I mean by that when I talk to military veterans, and specifically, David, I told you that we want to promote the idea that other military veterans or military active duty that are considering leaving the military to look into AI machine learning as a job, right?
Mhm.
Earlier, I said when you work on AI machine learning for a business process, you bring a perspective that lots of the individuals that has been working on that business process for a very long time that are siloed in, they don't get to see, right? Because they don't come up to the surface long enough to see what else is going on in that business process, right? If it's a multinational, or if it's like a business that's running in 50 different states, they don't really see what goes on into that organization, because they're performing their duty continuously in that silo, right? But when you are a military veteran, you bring that soft skill and you bring that priority and urgency to understanding how machine learning works. And you get to see the business from a level that nobody else gets to see, because you're collecting data from each of those silos, and you understand the difference between the quality of data and what are some of the concerns that you bring to the table. So, like, look, this silo, New York does great, but Vermont is just terrible, right? Like, their data is just not working out for us. We have to do something about that, right? So this kind of perspective that military veterans bring to the table, I think they all combined are a good transition for a military veteran, right? As in, okay, you've been out of military for a while, or you're thinking about getting out of military for next few years or whatever. As you're preparing, look into AI machine learning world, because your soft skills, that ability to understand technology from the depth that is not probably being taught in schools anymore, as a military veteran, you bring that to the table. That's
Or
your
the real world perspective. It's like maybe they
on top
teach
of
it like
everything.
in
Cherry on
school,
top.
but this is maybe how it was when I was out there in the field,
Mhm.
and this was the cause of my problem. Like you said, the line of sight of the radio, there were trees in the way or whatever. So that's one thing, but you can bring a lot of skills out of the military, and a lot of those are really valuable. The foundation that I got in electronics theory and communication, wireless communication theory, all that stuff was really valuable. But employers and they're not going to consider you until you've got that educational component. And I don't think that's talked about enough in the military. Is these days you really need that 4-year degree, or at least some sort of associates in technology before that military piece can combine well with the basic qualifications of the job, because a lot of companies, they just won't consider you. You don't have the degree. They won't, you're not up for consideration. You could be the most bright, intelligent, well-educated military person, on the job training, extracurricular training, educational, not non-professional improvements and that sort of stuff. But if you don't have the 4-year degree, it makes it really challenging for an employer to hire you these days. So that is a big piece.
Yeah, I think that the real world experience that you mentioned. Look, you can put somebody in a class for 4 years, and then you can put somebody out in the field for 4 years. They will come back with two different mentality, right?
Yeah.
How do you achieve a task? What is that mission here? What is the priority? This sort of engagement with other human lives at stake, I think, creates that military veterans in a different clay of shape, right? Shape of clay, so look, I'm not putting down anything about anybody here, right? I want to make that clear. I see a lot of military veterans, they want to get out of military and do project management, right?
Hmm.
Fine. I think that's perfect. That's really required a job in all the business organizations, right? Um, but there's other fish on the sea, right? So you want to catch a job that is not project management related, but you have the flexibility of thinking like, okay, maybe I don't want to do project management. What else can I do? The intimidation comes from the fact that, okay, look, I've seen a bunch of people that does coding on Netflix, and that's how they do data science and machine learning, right? I want to break that. I want to break that and say, like, no, it's not all about just coding. AI machine learning is a lot about common sense and understanding how humans behave and how the machine should behave, right? Because you want to get to a point with AI where AI is able to provide you with a service where the humans don't even feel like, but what the humans are not even able to detect the fact that AI is providing that service, not a human, right? Because it's very seamless, right? So that's why I say that when you're transitioning out of military, or you already transitioned, but you're already doing a job that you're not satisfied with, and you're looking for a better career path, AI machine learning is not only because you can do the job in AI machine learning. There's plenty of opening for you in AI machine learning world. It's just that in the future, your threat is not AI. Your threat is people that are using AI. As in, if you do a job and you do the job very manually, and you have very least amount of AI associated with it, not all of the jobs, but majority of the jobs will have some sort of impact by an AI. So your real threat is the people with AI that will take over your job versus somebody without AI, right? So I just want to put that out there clearly.
The automation component is the world is becoming more automated. People can do things more efficiently with some automation. Um, you want to be out ahead of this technology, maybe driving some of that automation. If you're the one implementing the automation, that, that's some job security for you. But the educational component is really important there. So that's how you differentiate yourself, and that's how you break into the field. I think it is challenging to break into the data science and machine learning field because there is no entry point. Just be honest with that. Is there's no entry level position for a data scientist. You have to already be an expert in. We used the radio systems example before. You need to be an expert in radio systems, and then have the educational component for the AI and machine learning. If you can bring those two fields together, now you've got something really valuable, and
Wow.
now you've got the edge in the job market, which is becoming more competitive these days. When I first started in the industry, nobody knew the skills that I've got, and so I was very employable. It's become more prevalent, and people are teaching it in academia. People are getting those in their 4-year degrees, maybe even in their 2-year degrees,
Hmm.
and there are plenty of people in the entry level. But to differentiate yourself, and you can as a military veteran, you've got to have both the real world experiences and the educational component.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot in my students, and I always make sure to let them know, it's like, look, I've struggled. I don't have a degree, and I've achieved, maybe sometimes there's some that kind of well, I'd say that I was blessed in life. But you're right, to your point, there is no clear path for someone that's going to be an AI engineer, or not say engineer, somebody that's going to work in within AI, machine language, deep learning, and unless you've been, and this is my understanding of data science is, um, you had to have been one of those guys that worked on databases that happened to be like in 2000 to 2004 that jumped into like analytics, and you're able to understand that machine language or deep learning is just the next level of analytics. Except for the fact that now you're taking what you didn't know what you were looking for is the difference, where in analytics you knew what you were looking for. Well, with machine learning, you don't know what you have until you look at the data and you run it through some kind of um, algorithm per se.
Yeah.
Statistically, you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I not seeing here? And then you start to develop, okay, so where do I fit in machine learning? Where do I fit in AI? But it is not, there isn't a clear path. You just have to be one of those guys that happens to like databases, and then from there your data sources become your main source of, okay, what do I do with this? And
Mhm.
then if it turns into something, then you do. But it's not like you said, there is no clear path. You had to be in that area. And even still, I have people that are in that area that are intimidated by AI. They're like, no, 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 no. I understand data warehousing, data marts, analytics, the AI portion of it. I don't want to get into that. And the apprehension, only because they think that they're possibly going to lose their job to an AI process or something. At the end of the day, they don't realize that AI is just going to be another tool in the tool belt. And then I say AI, machine learning, like what's the capabilities we have in the cloud now with ML. You have a lot of statistical methods of being able to turn data and data lakes into something that means something, whether it be security, whether it be in the medical field. They're learning to turn it. And when I look at it, it was difficult to put together an analytical data warehouse. It takes years. Took me 2 years to put together my first data warehouse. 2 years. Analytics and the cloud and data lakes, they take the novice guy into all of a sudden into expert type of data outputs. And that's hard to beat. I know how challenging and how much learning I had to do for 2 years to get it right. I see it now. It's so much
The
easier.
tools are better these days. Let's say
Yeah.
businesses are offering better tools and things. There's a lot much more robust open source community supporting these different tool chains and things.
Yeah.
But one of the points that you made earlier, which is at the turn of the century, big data was all the rage, right? Collect all the data, get whatever you can, search results, marketing, all of this. People were trying their best to utilize it back then. They were saying, all right, we're going to do statistical number crunching and we're going to find trends and stuff. That's still the role of the analyst. The analyst is trying to take away knowledge from data. They're trying to derive some sort of knowledge so leaders can make better decisions. That's the analyst's role. The data scientist or the machine learning engineer, let's start with data scientist. The data scientist is trying to take that data and develop some sort of automation component, which is I have these data, I'm going to combine it with a couple other data sources, and now I've got some sort of detection system where I can automatically detect fraud. I'm not trying to pull knowledge out of data anymore. I'm trying to do an instant sort of detector system or an instant classifier system or an instant translation system to go from English to Spanish
I
or,
get.
or something like that. It's the automation component. Part of that job is definitely coding. The role of the machine learning engineer is about making that fast and scalable so you can push it into different environments and everybody and their mom can get immediately results from Alexa, right? So there are definitely roles for coders, for algorithms experts, for people who know data, for people who know customer problems. There's so many different roles within just the few that I described right there. That there is employment opportunities for a lot of different folks. But becoming well educated or exciting enough that somebody will be willing to give you a shot in one of those roles how are you going to do it besides education?
So, David, quick time act. How many more minutes do you think you have left? It's been
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour here. I can keep going for a little bit longer. There's
15
a
minutes.
couple of plugs here. I'm
Yeah.
not selling anything, but there are a couple of plugs that I like to
Oh,
make.
we need the plugs. Please
Sure.
go.
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Have at
Okay.
it, David.
Sure. So for military veterans who are trying to drive their career into technology as they transition out of the military, Veterati, as you know, Asif, is really valuable for that. You can make connections with folks. Veterati, the website, sign up. It's free. You can go reach out to subject matter experts in a variety of different fields, any field you could possibly think of, and try to get some time with them to speak. So that's a great opportunity for people who are specifically interested in data science and machine learning. I'm one of the organizers for the free and volunteer professional group, Veterans in Data Science and Machine Learning. So you can look us up online on LinkedIn. All volunteer force of people. We take very small membership fees, only if you're able to pay. And that helps us just deliver more content to folks, to give away free prizes, to give away scholarship opportunities for military veterans trying to get into this field. So that's the second plug there. And then finally, if you're listening to this and you are interested in doing more speaking opportunities, I just started a new presentation opportunity at my work. It's not a podcast. It's a sort of speaking engagement thing for technical experts. So if you want to present to a technology company, whatever your background is, I'd love to connect with you on that. So that's my piece.
Um, I think one lesson I've learned when I got out of the military is look for the other military guys.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's silly. I know it's sort of like, cliquish, right? Like, oh, in high school, look for the guys that you can be friends with, right? But it's different world out here. Once you get out of military, you're looking to get into the professional world. Trust me, trust me, trust me. You want to get into the crowd where they accept military veterans. You're appreciated. You're valued that much more. I can tell you from my experience. Maybe it's different for somebody else who hasn't had that experience, but for me, it's been amazing to have that camaraderie after you get out of the military, to have that feeling of brotherhood. It's just perfect, right?
Yeah.
So Veterati, again, do Veterati, please do. Just check it out. Create a LinkedIn profile if you don't have one, and get into Veterati.
Even
And
if you're not a military veteran, if you would like to help military veterans with their career, please do volunteer.
please do volunteer at Veterati. And then you have Ted Helms group, right? They have their own podcast. My goodness, those podcasts are fire, right? Like if you don't know where you want to go in life, right? Be it project manager or be it something you want to do outside of military, or even if you're in military, let's say you are assigned to MIT Accelerator for Air Force, right? You want to learn about AI machine learning. Look at that LinkedIn group and check out their podcast called Data Canteen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing podcast. And as far as your networking with military veterans goes, right? When you're searching for jobs and you're on LinkedIn, right? You type in recruiters and then you start connecting with the recruiters. Well, instead of typing in just recruiters, look into military recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're looking at the corporations that you're specifically targeting, look up who's the military veteran within that organization. So if David is veteran in his organization, reach out to David, right? Or reach out to the military recruiter within David's corporation, right? Or organization. Just so much to learn, but guess what, guys? It just boils down to the point of getting back to your brotherhood, where you've done so much in military, right? And the only reason you've done it is because of the military guys that were next to you. I didn't do it for a paycheck. I can tell you that much. I did not do this for a paycheck. Maybe I did it for the VA benefits, which is a whole nother ball game, right? We can talk about VA benefits with somebody who does VA benefits for the VA, and have them come to the podcast. We're not going to talk about today, but look, I definitely did it for the guys that are left and right of me, because we went through boot camps together. We're like brothers. We're still like 20 years later, we're still talking, right? We're still, having that camaraderie inside and outside of the military. So yeah. And with all that said, David, the reason I asked you for your time is because I'm not going to let you get off this podcast without talking about semiconductor chips.
Okay. All right.
Electrical engineer is going to leave the podcast without talking
We
about
always got to talk about it.
All right. Well, here, I'll give a quick little thing just so we can check the box there. So, over the past several years, I've been in academia, right? Neural networks are becoming more popular. Machine learning and deep learning are becoming more popular. That was all brought about because of people using NVIDIA video graphics cards for computations, right? And that was a novel thing to do back in 2012. Nobody was doing that yet. And so now people are starting to develop purpose-built semiconductor chips that will do specific machine learning operations, that will do specific neural networks and things like that. And that is more power efficient. It's faster than doing it on GPU. It's going to be a big enabler. You're starting to see it as little small components baked into processors, right? The Apple Silicon, the M1 chip, some of that is driven by AI and machine learning execution. They want to be able to execute those sort of code instructions quickly. Then you have other purpose-built semiconductor chips for, let's say, the Amazon Alexa, or the Fitbit on your wrist, or this or that, right? All of these are driven by machine learning decision processes these days. And so having a chip that'll support that to be power efficient and fast is a whole industry in and of itself. So first you got to learn electrical engineering, then you got to get a job in a semiconductor chip manufacturer, but then you can start to bring in some supplementary knowledge in AI and machine learning. And now you've got those two pieces, the subject matter expert piece and then the AI piece, and you can start fusing those together to do great things. So education.
Yeah, and I would add to that piece that if you have that mindset where you want to be in cutting edge technology, well, nothing gets more cutting edge than working on a device that is about atom size wide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that atom size wide space is how you are able to perform with neural network, right? So when you look at semiconductor chips, it plays into the PPA, which is your performance, your power, and your area. So smaller the area, better the power, less the power consumption, better the performance, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the goal. So when I say atom size, it's getting to the point where, if you cut it a little bit more, you're going to get the actual silicon atoms size semiconductor chips, right? So
they're getting down small.
What they call nano wafers now? What they call nano wafers?
It's getting to the point where you can count out the number of atoms in each substrate level, and it's getting down into like the dozens of how small the atom counts are, how thin these things are. So it is very small.
Very small.
You're not going to go below the size of an atom, and people are hitting that limitation right now. And they're finding workarounds. How do you go smaller? How do you go from it being a flat chip to a three-dimensional chip, to a more three-dimensional chip? So there is a lot of innovation still in the electronics industry.
And the reason it's worth noting that for veterans or anybody, actually, if you're an organization thinking that we're looking to do machine learning, and all of a sudden you realize that your specific industry task requires you to have these sort of chips that you cannot actually have out in the cloud. You have to have it built in-house because of the the levels of activities that you have to perform and sensitivity of it, right? You cannot have a tank roll by next to your facility and expect the semiconductor chips to work perfectly, right? So it's the vibration and all these things matters. So when I say that, I want to add the piece about how many efforts are being generated in 2023 and for the last 10 years or so on bringing back the semiconductor chips industry back into the U.S. soil, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
it is so sensitive. These chips, not sensitive as in vibration sensitive, as in sensitive in supply chain planning wise, right?
Mhm.
We have to develop the semiconductor chips within our backyard. So that way, if David creates that next level of AI machine learning and he needs that chip from Ohio, Idaho, or New York, right? He can just drive up there and pick them up on himself and put it back in his car and just drive back to Arizona, right? But right now, you have to depend on China. You have to depend on Taiwan.
Taiwan. Yeah.
Specifically say Taiwan because if the Chinese ships are able to block that shipment to coming into California or coming into New York, your project, whatever you have designed, it just went down the water, right? Down the toilet. You want to be able to manufacture this in home where you have easy access to semiconductor chips to make your AI machine learning function, right? So no matter what sort of semiconductor chips we are developing, we are looking to bring that industry back all into the U.S. So that way we have a good supply chain planning and a secure supply chain planning.
All good points. But we still rely upon raw materials from other nations. So just having the manufacturing in the U.S. is not enough.
Right.
You can't really force these materials into the ground because you want them on American soil doesn't mean they will be. So
Right.
we still have to play nice with the nations, and that's part of diplomacy. Outside of my area of expertise, though.
Hey, when it comes to that rhetoric and politics, it's out of all our nerds' expertise. We see logical ones and zeros. That's another level. That's like what we consider layer 8 in the OSI model. It doesn't exist.
Layer 7, I'm cool. I'm cool. That's too far from me. Layer 8, nah, cut it off.
Layer 8, look, layer 8 is something not defined. It's mushy, and no one knows what it is. But there is a layer 8, and it has to start with like politics and rhetoric. I have no clue what that is. Like that's another language.
Or comment section on a YouTube video or Facebook, right?
There you go.
That's layer 8. I think just to finish that up, right? What's happening is because all these manufacturers are moving back into the U.S. Intel has a huge effort in Arizona. You have On Semi in New York, and Texas have Samsung. TSMC and from Taiwan is working in Texas as well. So what's happening is that we don't have the expertise that we need to work in these factories. So we're developing this expertise. So if you're a veteran and you're listening, or if you have a veteran in your life that you would like them to become aware of these situations with in manufacturing shop floors or fab, as they call it, that are coming into the U.S. Well, they're opening up lots of opportunity for veterans. For example, Texas Instrument up in North Dallas, they're bringing in military veterans to come in and work for Texas Instrument in their new factory for 6 months, right? Sponsoring that. So there's needs for experts, not necessarily experts. They have to come in as an expert, but they will become expert over time because the amount of people that we have leaving the workforce in semiconductor chips industry, we need to replace that. We need to have younger generation get involved in mathematics, engineering, and all things related to the fab and semiconductor manufacturing. So as a military veteran, there's a specific target for that. White House has put out $52 billion in CHIPS Act to have support for the industries to develop manufacturing in the U.S., the fab in the U.S. And part of that is training. Lots of the investment will go into the training for whoever wants it. So if you have a VA GI Bill and you have vet tax program, or you have the other ones, I forgot, the VRBI, right? All those programs that you have, you can also look into becoming subject matter expert in this field, which for next 30 to 40 years, right?
It's a great point that you're making. Is there are employment opportunities right now in manufacturing, and that's an entry level position. But to get up to that next level, the engineering piece where you're doing design, is going to require more training.
Absolutely, and use your VA benefit for that, right? Go to school. You get your voc rehab. That's what I was thinking for, not VRBI, voc rehab. You get your housing allowance paid for, so that's like almost some of your salary, right? So you could pick a job that is entry level and supplement yourself with the housing allowance to sustain yourself until you get to that level of engineering and you're able to make more money, right? So you see, I was practicing that whole
Got
thing
it.
like, in my head. I was like, gotta get it all in point while David is here so he can back me up on this.
Great
He's
points.
been
All
waiting
great
for you,
points.
David. He's been waiting for you. We haven't had too many people that can break it down like you, and so he's been he's been waiting for this moment in our podcast to happen. Look at him,
You,
ear
you
to ear, Cheshire cat and a half.
Yeah, you can have somebody who calls himself an AI machine learning expert or something, but like, where are the bona fides, right? You're just you're an expert in marketing for these products, or you're an expert in business, or you're an expert in programming or something. It's hard to be an expert in so many different disciplines, and I still am not comfortable calling myself an expert in maybe more than the small piece that I know about.
Yeah, it's like a person wearing a scrub and calling himself the nurse or doctor or
Doctor.
the surgeon or the specialist in the head, right?
Mhm.
Or you're just an asylum seeker. No, what is it called? People from mental hospitals that escaped the mental hospital with a scrub, So you could be a lot of things, Not a subject matter expert. So
David, you're wise beyond your years, my friend. You are so amazing. I have to be honest with you. Some people are quick to put on the hat and say, you know what, I am it. The buck stops here.
right.
And it takes a rational person that knows himself well to say, you know what, I'm not the expert, even though you know more than probably 98% of the population. So kudos to you. Thank you for what you do. And I hope that we can have you on again,
Yes,
maybe
sir.
in the near future, and
Part
maybe we
two.
can elaborate on any one of the topic areas we touched on. But thank you for today. You've been
Sure,
amazing. Yeah.
absolutely. I've enjoyed this. This has been great. Thanks, guys.
David, you can you can explain yourself with some words or with just the energy of how do you feel? Is it "Ay, ay, ay, ay," or is it kind of like ay, ay, ay?
Yeah. No, I'm just joking. It's been great. It's been great. Let's do it again sometime, guys.
At this point, is yeah, I'm just hungry, guys. Come on.
Thank you so much, Lucky. It's been great. Looking forward to the next episode of Ay, 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 ay. Thank you, guys.